Hello and welcome to our PlusSpec for SketchUp Get Good Fast webcast series. My name is Drew Povey and I'm your host. Now the reason we're doing these webcasts is because although recorded tutorials are great, they are somewhat static and impersonal. These webcasts are live and they give you the benefit of asking questions and hopefully to get answers right away. We can also spend a bit more time going into topics at a deeper level, and if you're new to PlusSpec or don't even have it yet, there's no better way to truly take a look. Before we start, we'd like to give special thanks to our platinum sponsor, Brickworks Building Products. Brickworks are one of Australia's largest building product companies with a product range that includes bricks, pavers, stone, masonry blocks, precast concrete panels, and the list goes on. They lead through style and innovation, creating beautiful products that last forever. We'd also like to thank our gold sponsors. Builders Profits provides coaching and training to the building industry no matter where you live in the world. Dinsel is a lightweight stay-in-place formwork system which, when filled with concrete, produces a load-bearing, fire-resistant structural element. And Stramit is a leading Australian manufacturer of roll-formed steel building products. So in today's session, we're going to be focusing on the BIM tools and talking about advanced communication and estimating. We're going to demonstrate how you can actually communicate in the model, whether it be amongst a single office, or even just making notes for yourself as a single practitioner, as well as communicating with other consultants, such as your structural engineer, your builder, your contractor, and obviously vice versa. We're also then going to demonstrate some of the BIM tools that enable you to do some more advanced kind of estimating and particularly focus on the difference between quantifying an item versus quantifying a material, which is where I think a lot of people that are new to PlusSpec or intermediate get a little bit stuck. So let's just dive right in. So today we're not going to be doing a live Q&A at the end, but if you have questions, please ask them as we go along or throughout the session, and we'll make sure that we will be getting back to you afterward. I'm going to start with communicating because I do think it's one of those overlooked features and I think it's really important. I'm going to focus first for the architectural designer. And again, it doesn't matter if you've got multiple people using PlusSpec in your office or even if you're a sole practitioner. The thing that is often disconnected for architects and designers is information. And building information modeling means that your model is filled with information. But often, most software don't take that further. So as an architect or designer, you might be making a whole bunch of notes, and often you've got them on your desk and you're scribbling, but they can be accidentally thrown in the bin. You could spill coffee on them, or they just get misplaced, or you just get this big stack of papers and you eventually just forget where you're at. So if you can capture all of your notes and put it in your 3D model, it means that you've got a really concise place where you're putting all of your information. Same with if you're speaking with your customer, if you're speaking with other team members, and then obviously consultants and so forth. So I'm going to quickly turn off the trees just because they're a little bit distracting. And I'm going to click on the BIM tool, and it's in obviously the PlusSpec toolbar. It's the third from the right. So you click on the BIM, and you're going to see that there's three icons in there. There's the BIM icon, the MEP, and the tag tool. Now in this webcast, and hopefully we're going to keep it fairly on point, fairly short today, we're going to be focusing on the tag tool and the BIM tool. We're going to be starting with the tag tool because this is the communication tool. And I'm going to show you that when it launches the dialog, there are various categories, and some are all mixed in there. It's just really trying to have some kind of logic to where we're putting the different kind of tags. For example, you have the communication, cost, office, safety, time. Now, for a lot of design offices where you're doing markups, whether again you're a sole practitioner or you've got a project manager that's overseeing some architects or some graduates, often there are hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of paper that are printed throughout the course of a project, and each page is marked up with big fat red pen and writing everywhere, and it's very quick to have some problems and issues arise from that because again you're printing, which is a cost to the practice, but then you're creating this paper that is not connected to the actual project. And Like it is for your own notes, it can be very easy to spill coffee on those things because we all know architects and designers love their coffee. And also, it can just get lost and certain things can be missed. So by using the tag tool to mark up the model, it means that, again, nothing's going to be lost. And you're also going to have a record of all of these variations or changes or markups from the start of a project to the end. And that can be really beneficial to a practice. One of the things that a lot of practices don't do is adequately review a project at the end of the project to see where the kind of time wastes were and what cost them money. And so it can be really beneficial to look back and see the variations and see whether you charge for them, or to see how many markups were required and throughout the design process itself. So you can capture all of those things. Now, some people reach out and say, okay, great. So you want us to add now our project manager to the list of people that are going to use PlusSpec for SketchUp in our office. And the answer is yes, but they're not really having to upskill that much. We're not saying they ever have to be a PlusSpec ninja or overly good at using the software. All they need to do is, number one, be able to navigate and click through the different scenes so they can strip back the model, check out the structure and all that kind of stuff, and then know how to drop in the tags, which is actually really quick and it's really easy. So I'm going to start with a markup. So we don't have one that's called markup, but we do have one that's called consider revising. And obviously that can be used from your own team, but it can also be used from your consultants. You might get some stuff back from your structural engineer saying, hey, consider revising this design because the structure that you're going to require to hold it up is just excessive. So all you do is you select the appropriate tag and then you locate it. Now, if you wanted to, you could even go into the structure scene because you might be looking at that and you'd be like, well, let's consider revising this detail here and what we're going to do right there. Once you locate the tag, and the best part about the tags is they're visually located, they're visually connected to the point in the model that you want people to look at. And again, with plans, from your plans to elevations to sections or whatever, you're marking up every page. And often you're doing the same kind of thing on every page. Whereas this isn't a 3D model and you're capturing that exact location that's going to have an effect on everything that you do. So for me, it's just a lot smarter. Now you'll notice when you place the tag, it's got like a little red triangle above it, and that's when the status is urgent and important, and it also means unfinished. You then have the ability to also mark it in progress and then also complete or archive. Now, if it's in progress, it will turn orange. If it's completed, it will turn green. So it's a great visual marker to understand what items are unfinished and what ones have been completed. Now, you can also then assign it to people. So again, if you've got an office, you might have your project manager to the direct person that you need to make the change, or it might be assigned to the structural engineer from the architect, whatever it may be. And then you can even put contact email so everyone knows who they should be responding to should they have to follow up with an email. I always put in location because I think that it's a really important one. It means that if the tag is accidentally moved or whatever, you can always locate it to the position that you're supposed to be talking about. So this might be, the parapet or the rammed earth to frame connection or whatever you want to call it. And then you would be typing in the markup what you want changed. Now, the other thing that's really cool about this is that you can put additional information, for example, a URL. If you have your contracts and you've made a URL out of them or hosted them online, you can actually attach it to a contract, or you can, if you're trying to do a product specification, you can find the product specification online, put the URL or the product website. You can also put in purchase price and in-store prices, and we'll get into this a little bit further because the tag tool isn't just a communication tool, it is also a tool that you can use for additional estimating. But we'll keep it design focused for now. When you press submit, it locks it in there and it attaches all of that information. Now it also date and timestamps this, and it's hard coded, which means no one can change it. And that's great for any kind of litigation or contractual stuff that you do with your customers, etc., because it definitely cannot be changed, it's hard coded, and everyone can refer to it. Because of this, we actually have a lot of people that are even having their customers essentially sign off inside of the model, and they're adding like a custom tag with the date that the customer's signing off and more information, etc. Now I'm going to close this. You can just keep on now going around and dropping in a whole bunch of different stuff. I will show you a couple of different tags though. I'm going to pretend that we've got a variation from a customer. So the customer signed off on the design, they've come back at a later time and they've said, you know what, we want to make a change to this deck. So I could find the tag, I can locate the variation. And even for an architect or a designer, this is really good practice because again, you're keeping track of everything that's happening throughout the process. So again, you'd be saying, you know, customers decided to blah, blah, blah. And I will actually do this one as in progress just to show you the color change. And you can even record how much you charged for it. So it was $500, for example, or that's how much you will charge for it. And then press submit. You can see that it's in progress and that tag has now been attributed. So before I quickly show you how you can kind of look at these tags and change the information or apply to them or even look them up on your takeoff, I will quickly show you how this is actually a really great estimating feature as well. So a lot of builders and contractors are using the tag tool rather than modeling anything in 3D. And it's particularly useful because it's quick, right? You don't have to get stuck in the process of modeling something that you don't need to do. And this is really good for certain things that you can't even put a 3D object to, such as safety, you know, confined space. And because PlusSpec allows builders, contractors, and estimators to create a bill of materials or an estimate unlike any other software, because it's in 3D, you really can start to manage and attribute these kinds of costing, which are normally missed on a traditional 2D plan. But you can even go through and you can put in, for example, provisional allowances and stuff like that. You might have certain items that you know you want to put in there, but you're not going to model it, so you can just press submit, locate it somewhere in your model, it doesn't even matter where you place it, and then you can assign the provisional allowance and you can put in whatever it is, and obviously you can put a purchase and install price or labor price. So it might cost, you know, $2,000 in materials and it might be $5,000 labor. Press submit. You've now got a provisional allowance and you haven't wasted any time trying to model. But over time, you might have like 50 plus tags, especially if you're doing it from start to finish, or if you're a builder contractor creating your estimate, you know, you might have a hell of a lot of provisional allowances and you might be, you know, putting in a bunch of other tags to communicate back to the architect or designer or whoever it may be. And you can access each individual tag. So you can right click on a tag and then show tag info, and that's going to bring up the dialog. And obviously you can change any of the original information, you can change the status, but you can also reply. So if someone goes back, say the builder's going back to the architect, you can reply and put in additional pieces of info, which is really beneficial. And it keeps a track of that kind of dialogue. Now, obviously, when you get a bunch of tags, you wouldn't necessarily want to go through each individual tag. So you can actually click on the takeoff tool, and then this is going to be in the tag section. You'll find every single tag that you've put in the model. It will tell you the status, whether it's been completed or not, and it's going to give you all of the pricing information, which will automatically update the takeoff. And obviously what the tags mean. So it's a very quick and easy way to see what tags are and what each tag is doing in a model. Now this is even used, if I turn the roof off, I'll just quickly turn the entourage off and the shadows off. You could even start to use tags for objects. I wouldn't do this, and this will go on to our next part. But say for example, if you don't really want to touch an object, you could simply add tags. So, you know, you're on this table, you might want to add some notes. So again, you go into the tag tool, put a general comment or some kind of comment, and you could put the product URL or something like that. However, I highly recommend that when it comes to objects that you look at the BIM tool. So that's what we're going to focus on now. Let's talk about 3D objects that you might have drawn yourself using SketchUp, or if you've inserted them from a 3D library such as the Ruby Sketch BIM Bits library or the SketchUp warehouse. When you insert these objects, they are, for lack of a better word, dumb. They don't have any information. And the power of BIM, being building information modeling, is really, I can't really describe it enough. I mean, we all understand that information is power. If every single piece of item that you have in there has information associated to it, then you're going to be able to design smarter and specify smarter and communicate smarter. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the more intelligent you can make your model, the better. And so for these objects, although they look pretty, and I've done the right thing here, I've assigned it to one of the PlusSpec layers, so at least I can control the scenes and plans and control its visibility in each plan. The intelligence is kind of stopped there, it ends there. So what I do want to do is actually click on the BIM tool once I've selected it, and I do actually want to BIM this object. Now, for a builder or contractor or an estimate, obviously this is really important because if you don't do it, it won't be in your takeoff. So you would have to come in and use the BIM tool to create, for example, this custom table, for example. You can give it brand and item code information, but the most important thing is the layer. Now you can either search for layers or you can just click on the drop down. And I do think that you should always try and use one of the PlusSpec layers. We should have covered most kind of iterations or circumstances that you require. However, you could create your own custom layer too and use that. For this one, I'm going to say 33 furniture. And then you can add notes, again, location stuff, very similar to the actual tag tool. And then obviously price. So, and the notes may be, cast in place or cast on site or whatever it may be. And, it might be 500 and, 300. So once you've done that, you're ready just to press submit. And now it becomes an intelligent object. If you right click it, you can go on dynamic components, component options. And this brings up all of the information. Again, you could adjust it because you've realized that you haven't put the right price in there. So it's flexible and ongoing. Press apply, you've now updated it. But more importantly, it will now be in your takeoff. So if you click on your takeoff, you'll see that there will be now a 33. So 33 furniture. And we have the one custom table with the pricing and other notes that we've put in there. Now, if you are an architect or a designer and you're not putting pricing information, this process is still very, very good because it enables you to put the URL to an actual product or specification that you're wanting to use. And what I was trying to say earlier is that information is power. If you are able to have beautiful objects, but also attribute the necessary information to it, it means that you can communicate better with everyone, whether it be yourself, your team, so you can create better product schedules, etc., or whether it be if you hand over the model to your customer or to anyone that you're trying to communicate with. It just means that there are no dumb objects in there or any question marks. Now, you can also use the SketchUp tools just to draw generic shapes. I mean, you can use the SketchUp tools, which is the benefit of SketchUp, to create anything that you want. And instead of creating, for example, a water feature that's drawn exactly, you could simplify the process. And now a lot of our builders and contractors do this because time is money. So what you do is you just draw a shape that's to the height and the dimensions, etc., of this, for example, custom water feature. But you haven't taken it to any higher level of detail than that. And then you can select the object and then you can, again, BIM it. So you're going to do the same process to what we did to an object that was already brought in. We're going to nominate and call it what we want. So again, this one might be custom water feature. And then again, brand item codes. Again, make sure you put it on the right layer. This one I'd put on personally probably 32. And then again, notes, etc. And then any kind of pricing information. Press submit. Now you can move. The good thing about these things is obviously, even though you haven't taken this to a high level of detail, you can still mass it out on the site and you can see how it's impacting your site and your project. And that's the difference between using, for example, just a generic object and then BIMing it rather than just using a tag, because you could have made the decision that you weren't even going to draw the object and you just put a provisional allowance or a tag in there that represents the water feature. But by at least drawing the shape, even if it's kind of low level of detail, you can use the BIM tool and do the same thing. Or as we did with the table over here, you could have either drawn it to a very high level of detail, or you could have just gone and searched for a water feature or the exact water feature in a 3D library. I'm going to show you how that interacts with the takeoff. So I'm just going to make a copy of this and just move it out here. Let's put it on the green axis just a bit. Just copy it there and move it across. All right, so now when I do my takeoff, you're going to see that it's quantifying the 32 external landscaping, and it's updated the quantity. So I've got 2 of these items, and obviously my pricing is updated to suit. Now, the big difference between one of the things that you really need to understand about the BIM tool is that these are for objects, and so is the takeoff. The takeoff is for objects and abstract items, right? They're doing the same thing, but neither of them are going to enable you to quantify something via material and its length. So for example, lineal meters or lineal feet, or square meters or square feet. So that's going to be the last thing that we talk about, and that's how you can create custom objects that you want to calculate via their material. And that's actually done through the material creator. PlusSpec materials are intelligent. They've been created with the material creator, and they're filled with information. And you can use the material creator to create your own materials in every single one of our tools. So for example, in the wall tool, you could go into it, choose the wall type that you want to use, go down to materials, and you've got your list of generic out of the box PlusSpec materials, both generic and real products, depending on your area. But the most powerful feature is the ability to be able to make your own. So I've made this Corten steel, I've loaded the product, and then now when I draw with it, if I just quickly come over here, I'll quickly show you. I can draw with that material. And obviously, because our tools, the wall tool is parametric, I'll just quickly extend it just so you can see how it looks like so. And so these are smart materials, and when I click on my takeoff, this new material, custom material, will be calculated. Most of you should know that. And you can do that for everything. In fact, you can even do it for structure. So when you're going into any of the wall tools or the beam tool or anything else, if you have a piece of timber or lumber or a piece of steel that you want to make, you can easily go down, select one that you want to copy, create, manage, put the sizing that you want, and you can see it's got the width and etc., thickness. And I'm in metric, but if you're using feet and inches, it would be feet and inches. And then that will always be available in your product, in your material library from thereafter. So most of us should know that. Now the beam tool enables you to do the same thing, and often I have people reaching out saying, look, I want to put some custom coping on, or I want to put like a custom trim or some fascia or whatever. And often what I ask is there a kind of profile that will suit that, particularly timber, especially in the beam tool, like if you're wanting to do stuff outside of the walls, etc. So you might have something that you want to create, and it's actually really easy for you to do, because again, all you need to determine if there's nothing in here that's to the exact size, you could go create, manage. And then all you need to do is load a new file. Now, if you want to put a color, you can just go onto your browser and search for white, gray, black, whatever color you want to use, save it as a JPEG or PNG, and then choose the file. So I've saved a bunch of colors, so I'm going to choose file, and I'm just going to choose this one here. And when you choose a color, the actual height and width doesn't matter at all. The only thing that matters is the name. So it might be custom coping. And then if I'm going to use the PlusSpec geometry, then I just need to make sure that I adjust it. And it might be, say, 100 millimeters. I'm using metric again, but you can do this in feet and inches. And the width might also be 100, just to keep it simple. Okay, and then you can decide whether or not you want to put it to the public material library, agree, and then create material. You have now created this material, and it will be in your material library forever after until you delete it. You can also create similar materials, so you can keep on batching these out and creating as much as you want in one go. I'm going to jump back into PlusSpec, and I'm actually going to do a sync. Now I've already done this, so I don't need to do a sync again, but if you're using a Mac and even a PC, it's best practice to go back into PlusSpec for SketchUp, click on the sync tool, and then click on the sync. But again, I've already done that, so I'm going to have a material that's available for me. So I'm going to go back into my beam tool. I'll just show you the one that I created earlier. So we'll let it load, and then I'm going to go into my list, and you're going to see that I'm going to have this generic no brand custom coping. It's gray, 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters. Now that means I can now draw with it. So if I really wanted to start quantifying this custom coping, again, I could go back into the all here. I can now start tracing. And because the geometry is getting created for me, it's really simple, right? And I could have drawn all of the pieces at once. I've opted just to draw one side. Now you'll know that PlusSpec keeps the vast majority of what we draw to a low level of detail. And that means we don't get too caught up in profiles. Like we would understand there might be like a full-on profile to that. But again, every time, every line you put in, every curve, etc., it slows down your model, particularly on a large project. And often you don't need to go to that level of detail because that's what your 2D drawing, your 2D details are for, your 3D details. However, if you really, really wanted to, you could even break into this group, and then you could use the SketchUp tools to put in, some kind of, whatever it may be. It might be some weird kind of profile. And then I could push and pull and delete that one out. So I've now gone to that level of detail, making the profile however I want it. Like ignore what I'm drawing because it's nothing at all. It's just giving you the idea of what you can do. But the best part about that is, number one, it's already been laid. You know that all of these custom things have been put directly onto your BIM group, which is good practice to do, just so they're already located. And then when you click your takeoff, it's going to be there. And if I click on my takeoff now, just to show you, we're going to go into the BIM group, and we can see my custom coping, and we've got it at the lineal meters. So that's my favorite way, and I do this if people want to put flashing or return details. I'll do the same thing because, again, you just need to, if I go beam, I won't edit beam, I'll actually just create another beam. I could just draw it, up and down and put it in place. But obviously, I would probably want to create a different material of a different, to show the different sizing if the sizing's different. But otherwise, I might, there might be some kind of corner profile here, put it in place, and then just press enter. However, I will show you how you can actually use SketchUp to create exact profiles. So imagine you did have a corner profile here, and I'll just simplify it by just quickly draw it. Whoops, what am I doing? Let's draw it a little bit thicker just so you can see it. Okay, cool. I'll go down, whatever. I'm going to simplify this as we go. Okay, cool. I'm going to turn that into a group. I always turn SketchUp objects into a group. I'm making this look more difficult than what it actually is, by the way. So many different ways that you can actually generate SketchUp and create SketchUp stuff. So anyway, all I might say that's without getting caught up into anything specific here. And then let's just say we'll grab that line and come back by the same. So that was, and then we'll come back and do the same on this side. Okay, so I've got this kind of profile, and then if I want to, I can move it out, because that's the benefit of having objects and separate objects, right? So I've got this thing here. Now, if I create something in my beam, but I don't want the geometry to be calculated, I just want the material, then I can do the same thing by actually just copying this material here that's already been created with PlusSpec. So copying it using the bucket tool, and then I can paste it on to this SketchUp object. So now this SketchUp object is going to be calculated via its same calculation, the lineal meters or lineal feet. The only thing that I'll need to do now for these purely custom shapes is assign it to the correct layer. So you can select it, and then in the entity info you can go down and find the layer that you want to put it on. So it might be whatever you want. I'm just going to say 21 capping, but some people will put it back on the beam as well. So now you've put it on its own layer and you've copied that smart material. If I do a takeoff, you're going to see that I'm now going to have the 21 capping, and I'm going to have that same material in there. So 21 capping, custom coping, and it's giving me the lineal, because again, this calculation is the lineal only. It's not worrying about the overall geometry size. So depending on what you want to achieve, you can always attribute the correct information, and you can ensure that you can communicate it to everyone that's involved in a project, and obviously that you can quantify it and include it in your bill of materials. So if you haven't been asking questions, please don't hesitate to reach out or ask them now. If not, thank you very much for coming along, and we'll see you next week.